Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29. Signed. 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 Committee Room 29.
Live and advise members that the committee meeting is in public session and will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. At this stage, members are going to take apologies received from Padraig Delargy, Jonathan Buckley and Doug Beattie. Not aware then of any other apologies. Item 2 then, declarations of interest, if any. David?
Can I declare the two items there? I have a daughter in receipt of student finance, and I am shareholder in a company that is
Levy. Yeah. No problem at all. Any others? None. Okay, we then move to chairperson's business. Number of items, members. Firstly, if the committee is content that we write to our former member, Saoirse Eastwood, who was much more successful than I in her general election endeavours, to congratulate her on her election to Parliament and thank her for her service to the committee and the best wishes of the committee to the continuing recovery of her husband Dale. Members are content that we do that? Yep. Perfect. We also write to Mr. Beattie thanking him for his short but welcome stay on the Economy Committee, and we'll have our new members join us next week. Draft minutes, members, then are at page 6 of the pack. Are they agreed?
Yep.
Great, okay. Matters arising, members, are there any matters arising that are uncovered later in the pack? If none, we'll then move to item 6, which is delegated legislation, SR 157, student loan support and student fees. The Department for the Economy has laid a statutory rule in respect of student support and student fees. The rule is subject to a negative resolution procedure and comes into operation for commencement of the 24-25 academic year. The committee did consider related SL1 at its meeting on the 19th of June and was content with the policy proposals. The rule also appears to correct the errors identified by the Examiner for Statutory Rules in her 20th report. This is attached for members' information. The rule matches similar provisions in England in respect of immigration policy and extends eligibility for student support to certain immigrant groups. The rule was also added to an official group, i.e. those granted leave to remain under a new Home Office scheme. The Ukrainian Permission Extension Scheme details are provided in the clerk's covering note. Do members have any questions or concerns in relation to this one? If not, could I put the following motion to committee, that the Committee for the Economy has considered SR 2024-157, the Education, Student Support, etc. Amendment number 2, Regulation Northern Ireland 2024, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Are members agreed? Agreed, thank you. Yeah. Item 7 then, delegated legislation, SR 147, Industrial Training Levy. Refer members to page 47 of their pack. The Department has laid an SR in respect of the Industrial Training Levy, Construction Industry Order Northern Ireland 2024, and the rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and came into operation on the 31st of August 2024. The committee considered the related SL1 at its meeting on the 19th of June and was content for the Department to make the rule. The levy is to provide the construction industry training and is to be imposed for the period commencing 1 September 24 and ending 31 August 25, and the levy rate is 0.55%, which is unchanged from the previous period. Further detail is provided in the clerk's covering note and in the information from the department. Members have any questions on this one? If not, I put the following motion to the committee, that the Committee for the Economy has considered SR 2024-146, the Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Order Northern Ireland 2024, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Are members agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 8 then, members, SL1, Personal Protective Equipment at Work. Refer you to page 59 of the meeting pack. The Department intends to lay a statutory rule, the Personal Protective Equipment Order at Work Amendment Regulation Northern Ireland 2024. The proposed rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and would come into operation on the 21st of October 2024. The proposed rule appears to bring Northern Ireland into line with the rest of the United Kingdom in respect of so-called LIM workers who are described as, or is it LIM?
It's LIM B.
LIM B workers who are described as having casual employment arrangements and work under a contract of service. This measure will require employers to provide PPE at work. This follows a GB court case relating to the application of EU regulations. Do members have any questions on this one? Problem. Are members content then that the department makes the proposed rule? We are agreed. Okay, members, we then move to correspondence. A large amount of correspondence has been received over the summer recess. In order to aid members' understanding, an index has been provided at page 68. Most of the correspondence can be safely noted for now, pending further briefings from the department. However, to ensure members feel appropriately briefed, the clerk will briefly talk through the 57 items if members have concerns or want clarification.
So members, very briefly then. So the first item at page 82, this is a response from the Permanent Secretary following the Department's 2024-25 budget briefing. Permanent Secretary makes various comments and suggestions as to how the committee should undertake its scrutiny of the Department's budget. If you remember, this was the debacle about the table. Okay, all right. So I'm asking Chairperson if the committee is content to write to the Department and actually formally commission them again to produce estimates memoranda for the spring supplementary and main estimates henceforth, and also seeking annual briefings on the Department's internal spending reviews and business plan. So the format of the estimates memoranda would be similar to what they actually gave us the last time. Remember the tables at the end, which actually I thought were quite good. So if that's okay, Chairperson.
Agreed.
Okay, the next one, item 3 at page 85. Members are asked to note departmental responses in respect of tracking of city and growth deal capital spending in the monthly capital reports. So what the committee had suggested was, why don't we add these to these monthly reports that we get? Department maybe not too keen on that for various reasons, but is the committee content to note, as the Committee for Finance has already written to the Department of Finance suggesting that given the sums involved, the City and Growth Deal capital procurement information should be included in the capital DDS reports and published in monthly reports. So they're dealing with that, and hopefully there'll be an umbrella approach to this through all of these City and Growth Deals. Members are happy? Yeah. Agreed?
It's for the Department of Finance rather than the Department of Economy.
I think the Department of Finance are the owners of SIB who produce those monthly reports, and all the committees, so but all the statutory committees get a wee monthly report, but it doesn't say anything about the City and Growth Deals. Okay. But they're going back to them and having a discussion about how to sort that.
Fair enough.
That's okay. And it is a load of money. But there you go. Item 4, page 103. Members are asked to note a copy of the May-June capital and resource account outturn for all departments. If you turn to page 110 and look at the non-ring-fenced resource DEL projections for the rest of the year, so what happens is you can see all the names of the departments on one side, and then there are these figures, and the figures are pretty much the same every month. You'd expect that. But the spending looks considerably lower in March than usual. That's very strange. For some departments, the spending is actually shown as negative. So in education, they're actually showing as negative, which doesn't make sense. They're going to charge the children? No, they're not. So what's going on is that given the unusual budget setting arrangements in 2024-25, these are understood to be preliminary figures, which will be subject to correction. And the same is also true for the capital projections. So if you look at page 114, the numbers are actually, some of them go down in March, and usually they go up in March because they're settling accounts. So the question then, Chair, is the committee content to note for now and to ask officials about this next week when they brief on the October monitoring round submissions? We should get updated figures. Those figures are very strange. Hopefully we'll get an update for them. That's agreed? Okay, item 5 at page 118. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence advising on the legal costs associated with ongoing cases linked to non-domestic RHI. The costs are estimated at 90,000 and are likely to be higher and are met from the department's DEL budget. I also understand that very imminently there will be secondary legislation relating to RHI which will deal with the tariff issue, and that in this calendar year, the department is planning to bring forward, subject to the agreement of the executive, a bill to close RHI. So that will be something that will land with us shortly. So is the committee content to note in the meantime?
Great.
Okay, so then we get to item 6, which is about sub-regional skills. Members were asked to note departmental correspondence indicating that in order to give effect to the expansion of student numbers at Magee by 500 places, this is to be done by raising the Masson cap on home undergraduates at UU and requiring the additional places to be at Magee, as well as increasing allied health professional places. My understanding also is that the Magee Expansion Task Force interim report will be published next week. So is the committee content to note on this one? Okay, moving on to item...
Sinead?
Sorry, Sinead. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, I suppose what I would like to do now is go back and ask the questions that we originally asked, and where the officials said that they couldn't actually give us the details until the September intakes. Now, if we could have a complete breakdown of where the students are studying and where the extra massing went, and the full complement of McGee, so that we have the figures for us for a place to start with.
Okay, that agreed, Chairperson?
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Sinead. Thank you. So moving on, if that's okay, to item 7 at page 130. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence on sub-regional economic action plans. The department appears to advise on 2nd October the committee will see a single overarching framework, and that detailed local plans will then follow later on. So is the committee content to note this pending the departmental briefing on the 2nd of October?
Great.
Very good. Item 8 then at page 133. Members are asked to note ministerial correspondence in respect of the department's transformation bids. So these are around things like the public sector apprenticeships plan, which at some point may include childcare apprenticeships, but not yet, and post-19 SEN provision, which you remember, Caleb's, etc. Okay, the Minister clarifies that future bids will cover the digitisation of the Office of Industrial Tribunals and Fair Employment Tribunal and the Redundancy Payment Service. Is the committee content to note and ask officials about this when they brief next week on October monitoring? So ask them a bit more about transformation then.
Agreed.
Okay. Item 9, page 146. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence in respect of post-19 SEN provision to FE colleges, including the Skills for Life and Work programme for entry level and level 1, which is to be replaced from September 2025, a review of the Additional Support Fund and the HE Widening Access and Participation Plans, WAPs. The department is considering revisions to the above and to issues relating to legislative protections as part of the 14 to 19 framework. And also included in there is the invitation to the Caleb's Calls event on 17th of August, which I sent to you previously. So are we content to note on that one? Okay. Item 10 at 160, members are asked to note correspondence from the department advising of the launch of the consultation to integrate additional disability support within DFE training programmes at entry level and entry level 1, i.e. Skills for Life and Work. This consultation closes on the 11th of October. The department wishes to brief the committee on the outcome of the consultation on the 6th of November. So that being the case, is the committee content to note for now, and we'll come back to this in November, if that's agreed, Chair?
Agreed.
Lovely. Item 11.175. Members are asked to note a departmental correspondence referring to a stakeholder engagement phase of the 14 to 19 framework review and the Apprenticeship Challenge Fund, which is to encourage apprenticeships from underrepresented groups. Again, committee content to note. Very good. Item 12, page 181. Members are asked to note a response from the department in relation to queries from the joint concurrent meeting on careers provision. If you remember when we met with the Education Committee back in, when was that, May? The department clarifies that the joint DFE work programme, which the committee asked about, will include consideration of alternative career support for parents and carers, innovative delivery and better defined roles within the careers ecosystem. The programme includes the development of the careers portal, common quality standards, a specialist career solution for young people with SEN and a trained advisor programme. So that's the answer to some of those questions. Are the committee content to note?
Agreed.
Very good. Then members are also asked to note related correspondence in respect of the development of the careers portal, and this appears to be at a pretty early stage of development. Again, members content to note?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 14 on page 195. Members are asked to note correspondence from the Minister offering reassurance that departments are working together in order to develop the early learning and childcare strategy. Is the committee content to note?
Agreed.
Okay. Item 15, page 199. Members are asked to consider a copy of a DARD report into a previous rural childcare scheme. If you remember when NICMA came to us, they referred to this as being like a model of good practice that they were quite into. Is the committee content to write to the DE Early Years and Childcare Group and seeking commentary on the recommendations within that DARD report from a few years ago? See if they're working on something similar.
Yep.
Agreed. Very good. Item 16, excuse me, page 221. Members are asked to note the Minister's statement on the skills agenda, including the reboot of Skill Up, the Apprenticeship Challenge Fund, changes to MASN, and the use of WAPs to increase HE underrepresentation. Is committee content to note because we're going to be hearing from the Skills Council next week. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Of all the acronyms in it, it's like all the acronyms in it, it's like a sentence of.
Item 17 at page 249. Members are asked to consider the Department's response to committee suggestions that Hospitality Ulster be included in the LRA Employers Forum and the Northern Ireland Skills Council. Is the committee content to forward this to Hospitality Ulster?
Yep.
Agreed. Item 18 is at page 249. Members are asked to note a response from the Minister of Finance in respect of committee suggestions on additional support for hospitality through business rate exemptions, etc. Again, is the committee content to forward this to Hospitality Ulster for their information?
Yeah.
Okay. Then at item 19, members are asked to consider the response to committee concerns in respect of nighttime transport from the Chief Executive of TransLink. Is the committee content to send a copy to the Infrastructure Committee and note this pending an informal meeting with Hospitality Ulster and TransLink, which I have provisionally scheduled for the 1st of October. So 1st of October, Tuesday, lunchtime, we would meet with Hospitality Ulster, TransLink, talk about the nighttime economy, because the nights would be getting darker, and it's all about the night movers thing and all this, which I think Padraig and others were interested in. If we're content to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that date and time doesn't suit, please do advise. But okay, so it would be a lunchtime thing, 1 to 2. They'd say a few things, TransLink would say a few things, Hospitality say a few things, you would ask a few questions, and then you'd be informed at least, and that would give you something on this important subject. Item 20 then at page 257, asked to note a copy of the oral statement made by the Minister of North South Ministerial Council in tourism format. Content to note? Yep. Thank you. 21. Members are asked to note correspondence from the Department which advises that letters of invitation to the new members of the Tourism Board have been issued. Terms of reference and an action plan are to be agreed in September. Are the committee content to note that pending the briefing on the 10-year tourism plan, which we're getting in November? Yep. Okay, very good.
They had said that they would provide us with Ian Snowden had said he would provide us with a list of those members, but I'm not sure.
They've just sent the letters of invitation, but do you want me to follow up and ask for who they are? Yes, will do. If that's agreed, Chairperson. Yep. No problem. Item 22. Members will have to note a revised response from the Department to committee queries providing further information on the return on marketing investment for tourism NI. This is the question originally Mike Nesbitt, now Minister Nesbitt, asked, and this is a further update to that. So if the committee is content to note.
Great.
Lovely. Then moving on to some correspondence all about employment and business. 23. Yes, this is a copy of a notice of the consultation on the wide-ranging employment bill. Consultation closes on the 13th of September, and a copy of the ministerial statement on the consultation is also included. Some of the proposed legislation would apparently simply replicate measures which are already in place in the rest of the UK. Other measures include the enhanced protection for those employees who are currently classed as workers, measures around exclusivity clauses in 0 hours contracts, protections around fire and rehire, working time directive compliance, and the right to disconnect, as well as measures in respect of TUPE and the splitting of contracts. The Minister also references in his statement, it's not on the consultation, the devolution of the minimum wage. So is the committee content to note that, pending a pretty big departmental briefing on the outcome of that consultation, which I imagine it'll be a while before they come back to us because it's vast, and I imagine quite a lot of people have said a few things. I think the committee are content to leave it at that for now. Yeah. 24 is page 545. It's correspondence from the Department which confirms that the Employment Bill will be informed by the Management Expectations Survey and the Skills and Employment Survey, which will be complete in later 2024 and 25 respectively, as well as a possible all-island work quality survey. So this came about because I think members following the Good Jobs briefing from Dr. Wilson, where she said we need to do surveys and get data, and this is them doing surveys and getting data. So is the committee content to note? Moving to item 25, speaking of surveys, this is members are asked to consider correspondence from the Department in respect of the Micro Business Innovation Survey. The survey appears to show a significant reduction since 2014 in innovation by micro businesses during 2021-23. It's based on a telephone survey, largely based on construction, renting, retail estate and wholesale traders. The businesses that had higher rates for innovation tended to be those trading for 5 years or less, those with 5 to 9 employees, those with the most senior person was educated at the HND level or above, those that had at least one female owner, those that had turnover in excess of 250,000 in 2023, and those that had markets outside Northern Ireland. Is the committee content to note this pending a departmental briefing on technology clusters later in September? So we're going to hear about all these clusters that they're going to be focusing on.
agreed.
We're going to ask them about that. Item 26. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence on a domestic abuse safe leave consultation. Consultation closes on the 27th. The committee content to note this pending a departmental briefing on the feedback to said consultation.
Great.
Okay. 27. Yes. Is it page 649? Members are asked to consider a response to committee queries originating from Disability Action in respect of the treatment of individuals with disabilities at employment tribunals. Is the committee content to forward to Disability Action and the Committee for Justice and to seek a related briefing from Disability Action on this issue? If that is agreed. Okay. At page 662, you'll see further information on tribunals and information on the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, also provided by Disability Action. Members are content to note that there's quite a lot there, and I've read through it. And then at 29, which is at page 737, members are asked to note correspondence in respect of, again, the treatment of individuals with disabilities at these tribunals. Correspondence is marked as restricted, as it includes personal accusations of a serious nature provided by the correspondent. Members are asked to note the policy issues and look, if they are going to refer to this, to consider it carefully, if they are going to refer to individuals. But is the committee content to note this, given that we'll then get this briefing from Disability Action on the bigger issues, if that's okay? Agreed, Chairperson?
Yes, obviously the committee can't get involved in individual cases. So.
Thank you. Item 30 is, at page 806. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence and a briefing paper on a consultation on the postgraduate award scheme. Consultation closes on 26 September. The consultation is seeking views on a number of options, including increased focus on specific types of PhD, more directive targeting support to studentships which align more closely with departmental priorities, a possible increase in funded places from 750 to 1,000 per year, and or various levels of reduction in the ring-fence proportion of funding for PhDs. The idea that they're consulting on would be to give the universities more flexibility over how this kind of funding is targeted. And there's also things around the changes in the terms and conditions, which would allow our Republic of Ireland students to receive a stipend, raise the cap on international students to 30%, and allow for part-time and full-time PhD studentships, and allow for emergency leave and additional provisions linking to maternity leave. Quite a lot in this, members. So I'm suggesting is the committee content to note pending a departmental briefing on the feedback to the consultation. So some of that, the bit about the PhDs and directing the money to the universities directly might prove to be controversial for some, or others less so, but if they're content to note for now, that's agreed. So at 31, which is at page 871, this is, correspondence relating to a legislative consent motion for the Westminster Digital Markets and Competition and Consumers Act. The Act has already received royal assent. Legislative consent is not required. The devolved competencies in question include consumer protection law and the role of the Competition and Markets Authority. I'm not quite clear what the department wants. I think at the end of the letter they say they're after the committee's support. They don't need the committee's support as there's no requirement for legislative consent. All the same, is the committee content to seek a briefing from the department just on this legislation, just to see what it does, even though it's past the post now?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Members are asked to note guidance at page 1385 on the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act, which we got from the Competition and Markets Authority, and there's also an invitation to a related hybrid event on the 9th of September. Also included at this point is the Competition and Markets Authority annual report and accounts. These are laid in all of the legislatures in the United Kingdom. So is the committee content to note?
Agreed.
Yeah, there's very little. Well, there's some reference to Northern Ireland, but not a lot. Item 34. All right, we're getting into some stuff about insurance now. So I'm at page 1595. Members are asked to consider an invitation to an informal meeting hosted by the Committee for Justice with the Association of British Insurers in respect of insurance and premiums. This would take place 1 to 2 p.m. Tuesday 15th October in Parliament Buildings. There's also included as a press release on insurance premiums from the Association of British Insurers. So if you remember, members got quite exercised about this before. A lot of this sits with Justice. and how much it costs whenever people get injured in Northern Ireland compared to other places. So there's going to be an event hosted by Committee for Justice. You're invited to go along. If you recall, also members, the Association of British Insurers offered a further meeting with members from the Northwest. Did they do that, or do you want me to do that?
No, at 22nd of September.
So that's happening. Okay, so I don't need to do that. That's fine. Good, jolly good. So if members are content to attend that informal event, great. They can if they're free. Very good. Page 1599, this is a response from the Competition and Markets Authority about monitoring the insurance market. So the committee had written to them and saying, hey, I don't think the insurance market is working in terms of motor insurance for people in Northern Ireland, and they've come back saying that they're monitoring the situation. So is the committee content to note? Okay. Then at page 1602, we've an answer from the Financial Conduct Authority indicating that the motor insurance market is competitive in the UK, but that limited market competition in Northern Ireland may account for the higher insurance premium costs. So is the committee content to note?
Yeah.
Good. Item 37, members are asked to note a copy of the regulatory impact assessment covering the changes to the debt relief order. If you remember the £50,000, the £4,000 for a car and all that. The committee previously approved the related statutory rule which brought us into line with England and Wales. Committee content to note?
Note.
Thank you. Item 38, this is a response from page 1629. Atlantic Technological University to committee queries in respect of cross-border FE and HE cooperation and the recently agreed MOU with Ulster University and Peace Plus and other projects. Is the committee content to consider and seek an oral briefing at a possible second visit to Foyle?
After we do the first visit
Yes,
to every
yes.
Yeah,
Because
great.
there's so much to talk about, so that's okay. Thank you, members. Page 1634, item 39, nearly there, members. Members are asked to note correspondence from the department in respect to the 2024-27 DE research programme. So lots of projects that they're going to produce papers on, like employee ownership, and I see there's something that's appeared on that one, metrics for good jobs, productivity, all sorts of things, and also energy efficiency, Northern Ireland's textile heritage, and review of the investment strategy. As well as lots of other things about longitudinal educational outcomes. So, when I was Clerk of Education, this was the thing we said, that there should be a longitudinal study of how children start at primary school, go through post-primary, off to FE or HE, and then where do they end up, and follow it all the way through. So some research on that is, I think, things members had asked for before. Is the committee content to note, Chairperson? Lovely. Item 40, page 1670. Members are asked to note correspondence relating to the Financial Provisions Bill. We're getting a briefing on this next week, if the committee are content to note for now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 41, 1674. Members are asked to note a copy of the Memorandum of Response and the report on broadband investment in Northern Ireland. PAC is seeking an update from the department in 6 and 12 months' time. Is the committee content to note?
Yeah.
Lovely. Item 1697. This is just a copy of the Commissioner for Older People's report, which the Committee for Communities is writing to all the departments seeking their views. Are we content to note?
Yep.
Okay, members, now we come to some energy stuff. This is page 1750. Members are asked to note a response to the Infrastructure Committee indicating the Renewable Energy Support Scheme auction will likely be held in early 2026. Members content to note?
Great.
Okay, item 44, page 1753. Now, this is a number of departmental commissioned research publications. Okay, so briefly, I'll ask you to note the KPMG report. It's actually based on a very limited number of respondents, and it's all about the uptake of heat pumps. Perhaps 1,500 only have been installed in Northern Ireland in between 2010 and 2018. There's no requirement for those to be reported to the microgeneration certification scheme. So basically, in terms of heat pumps that have been installed, the picture is unclear. I'd also ask you to note the ACOM report, which refers to significant planning restrictions on domestic heat pump retrofitting and the need for radiator resizing for most heat pumps. The bit about the planning is that if your neighbour's house is nearer than 20 metres, you need planning permission, apparently, for a heat pump, which is interesting. The total domestic costs for air source heat pump and heating system installation are estimated at 10 to 15,000, rising to 30,000 if you go for the full package of all the improvements you could do. The annual fuel saving costs are given as 500 to 1.2 thousand, but of course those could change as energy tariffs change. Total non-domestic installation costs are given between 30 and 90,000. So, and the annual fuel savings on non-domestics are 2.3 to 3,000. And the cost of upgrading the grid to supporting heat pumps not included. There appears to be some question about the efficiency of air source heat pumps if the temperature falls below -15 for a prolonged period. Doesn't happen very often, but it has happened. Members may also wish to note the DFE report on low carbon heating technologies, which includes relevant air source heat pump, LPG, hydrogen blending and geothermal heating case studies. And this report refers to supply chains and trade people shortages. Is the committee content to send a copy of the AECOM report, the bit about the planning, to the Infrastructure Committee in respect of the planning issues, and to note the rest of it pending the consultation on district heating, which is forthcoming? Is the committee content to do that for now? I'm sorry, members, there's a ton of stuff there, but I think that planning thing, we'll see what, because I know things were happening in infrastructure around planning, so maybe they're ahead of this and know it already. So item 45.
Sorry to interject there, but some of us were at a meeting last week where it came up, and it always comes up when you're talking about renewable energy in terms of planning and whatnot. So there's been a number of informal meetings with Department for Education, Department for Justice. Is there any merit in a similar type engagement with the EFI committee on the issue of the impact of planning versus renewable energy, the economy, all of that there? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there that there might be a better way of taking that forward, or is an informal meeting a good way of doing it?
No. You want me to write to them and just see maybe they've got something interesting planned they could invite us along to, that, you know, where those issues could be discussed, but I can definitely do that.
I think, I mean, we're obviously hearing it from a very particular perspective, but it's an important perspective.
There
Absolutely.
was a planning notice which we had correspondence about it before from Minister O'Dowd. So there were things happening on this. I don't know if this heat pump thing was coming into it as well. It might have been
a domestic thing rather than the bigger. But it's all under the same thing, isn't it? So it's all.
It's about energy, achieving net zero. You know, all of that.
Absolutely.
Okay, nearly there, members. Item 45 is at page 1918. Members are asked to note correspondence from a residents group opposed to the overground additional north-south interconnector and seeking a meeting with the committee. Is the committee content to note pending a rescheduled informal briefing from Sony? Great.
I just think we note, like, we're not going to meet a residents group in relation to their views on we don't have any say in relation to a planning application or its impact. You know, we're not they've made their concerns known to the committee, but we have no role in the decision making process. So, you know, there's no point raising expectation to say that we're going to meet with them. You know, we note their concerns, but it falls outside our remit.
Okay, that's agreed. Okay, moving on then to item 46. Members are asked at page 1920. Members are asked to note correspondence from Renewable Northern Ireland. The paper by KPMG argues that renewable energy generation of between 1 megawatt and 5 megawatt, including small-scale so-called distributed assets, should be included in the new DFE contracts for difference. Remember, the auction's going to be in 2026. The report claims that distributed assets on farms and SMEs currently provide 23% of NI's renewable capacity. Experience in the Republic of Ireland seems to suggest that the vast majority of such distributed assets would be solar at about 4 to 5 megawatts, owing to planning constraints and economies of scale. And solar appears to be about 2.5 times more, requires more land to develop than wind. It's argued that the distributed nature of the assets would actually reduce the impact of grid connection failure. So the paper appears to argue for an NI version of the Republic of Ireland SRESS scheme, which favours community renewables. Is committee content to write to the department just seeking its views on the use of distributed assets and their inclusion in this contracts for difference auction? Right.
Absolutely, the one megawatt is key to that, rather than the 5. So allowing the community, it's where the entry point is the key to it. So.
Okay, that's agreed. Thanks, Chairperson. Item 47, 1950. Members are asked to note a copy of the Phoenix Energy Responsible Business Report 223. Is committee content to note?
Agreed.
Lovely. Item 48, page 1988. Members are asked to note a copy of the National Energy Actions UK Impact Report. Again, are members content to note?
Yep.
At item 49, page 2004, members are asked to note a copy of the Human Rights Commission newsletter, invitation to the launch of the annual report on Article 2 of the Windsor Framework on the 12th of September. Committee content to note.
Agreed.
Thank you. 50 at page 2018 are asked to note a copy of the Office of the Northern Ireland Executive in Brussels, April to May 2024 report. Content to note.
Yeah.
Thank you. And members are asked to note at page 2055, Invest NI's annual report and accounts. They will be getting a briefing from Invest NI in October on how they're getting on with the Lions report, etc. So I content to note that for now. At item 52 and item 53, page 2208 and 2245, these are reports and financial statement from the Bedford Street developments and McAleer, Rush, Dunlow, Ewart. So one of them owns the Bedford Square headquarters, the other one operates it, but they're both owned by Invest NI. So are you content just to note their statement? I've gone through it, there's not much in it. Content to note? Good. Then at page 2284, we have the Labour Relations Agency annual report and accounts. And again, I've given you some summary information in the little index if your members are content to note. Very good. 55, 2380, annual report and account of the Health and Safety Executive. Again, content to note. 2542 is the annual report and account for the Insolvency Service and Official Receiver. Again, I've given you some headline info if you're content to note that.
Yep.
Is that agreed, members?
Yeah.
Good. Right. Then 50, that was that, 57. Members are asked to note a complaint to the UK Parliament from a concerned individual. It's not within the remit of the committee. Are you content to note?
Agreed.
Not sure why they sent it to us. And then we have at page 2603, someone has written to us asking us for information for their thesis on the impact of Brexit on cross-border FE participation. Is the committee content to write to the department seeking information on the impact of Brexit on cross-border FE participation and cooperation? I'm not sure if they'll hold that information, but
Should we not just signpost the individual to the department directly rather than us becoming a
I
post box for the...
have done that
Okay.
already. But
Yeah.
okay, is that we just do that then?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Thanks, Chairperson. That is it. If members have any queries in respect of any of those items of correspondence, and thank you for your patience.
Agreed.
Very good.
Okay, we'll now move to the forward work plan member, which is at page 2605. Covered some of these already, but RHI legislation is imminent, both in terms of secondary legislation for the current tariff, but also executive's decision in principle to close the non-domestic scheme currently. I'm sure the department will then also wish to come to the committee with its replacement scheme at some point too.
Indeed. Also, additionally, Chairperson, which I haven't included, the utility regulator bill, and we're now expecting that. So basically, we'll probably get an RHI bill before Christmas. We'll then get a utility regulator bill in January. There'll be a fracking bill in June 2025, apparently. So these are a wee bit sooner than, certainly the RHI bill is a bit sooner than I would have expected. It hasn't appeared yet, but that will have an impact on our forward work programme. The visit to Sony, which we're not doing today, we may reschedule. If members are agreeable at some point in the future when we have our full complement. Now, on the 18th of September, right, as you're aware, my understanding is the City and Growth deal is going to be signed. So Northwest MLAs have been invited. So the suggestion is that we have a shorter meeting at noon and we restrict ourselves to the McGee Expansion Task Force, whose interim report will be produced the week before. So, and then we'll have another visit and maybe another one after that, where we do all the other things that members want to do: the airport, the port, the tourism issues, the cross-border cooperation on FE and HE, if members are content with that approach.
Agreed.
Okay, and obviously we will be having to fit in. We're definitely going to Studio Ulster, hopefully in November. I suspect we'll end up in Lagan Valley for a very good reason. No, it is. Not sure what we're going to do in North Antrim, but we'll think of something.
Tourism.
Tourism, very good. So, right, well, everyone will get a go. As I said before, there's an informal meeting with TransLink and Hospitality Ulster on the 1st to the 10th, which is a Tuesday at 1 to 2. An informal meeting with the Committee for Justice on insurance issues on the 15th to the 10th. If you look just forward to the 16th of October, that's an early start, which is Invest NI. Sorry about that. It's just we're trying to do effective questioning training immediately after that, if members are happy. And then on the 23rd, what we do is we'll have our informal session with the Oireachtas Committee on the ESRI report, which we about labour market inclusion, and then maybe do a strategic planning session, because by that stage we should have good visibility on the legislation and hopefully a full and stable complement of members.
Yep.
So if members are content with the forward work programme as drafted.
Members agreed?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And then with that, members, is there any other relevant business members would like to raise? Not at this stage. Okay. Well, we will then reconvene next Wednesday at 10 a.m. in room 30. And I put the question at the committee meeting does now adjourn. And I'll see you all next week, members. Thank you.
Committee room 29. Sound. Committee room 29. Sound. Committee room 29. Sound. Committee room 29. Sound. Committee room 29. Sound.